It is 3 in the morning. Something lands on your chest, or on your face, or it begins as a sound, a specific, insistent sound that pulls you out of sleep before you have fully registered what it is. Your cat is awake, and now, so are you. You lie there for a moment, running through the explanations you have assembled over months or years of this. Hunger, habit, the particular unpredictability of cats. You feed them, or move them off the bed, or pull the pillow over your head, and eventually you go back to sleep. You have decided you understand what happened. Most owners have. But the research on this behavior has been building for decades, and what it points to is not what most owners would expect. Not just the mechanism behind the waking, but what the persistence of it, across all of its causes, actually reveals about your cat and about the two of you. That finding comes at the end, and it reframes everything before it. Start with the explanation most owners land on first. The cat is nocturnal, wired for nighttime, and the 3 in the morning disturbance is simply biology running its program. This version sounds reasonable. It fits, but it is not accurate. Cats are crepuscular, meaning their natural activity peaks fall at dawn and dusk, the hours when their wild ancestors were most effective as ambush hunters of small prey moving through low light. Deep nighttime is generally a lower activity period for wild felids compared to dawn and dusk, not the biological peak the 3 in the morning timing would require. That's not the cat following its internal clock. The 3 in the morning timing has to be explained by something else entirely. The next candidate is hunger, and this one is not entirely wrong, but the research makes clear it is substantially incomplete. Cats are obligate carnivores whose digestive systems were shaped by a prey-based diet. Their metabolic profile was built for frequent, small inputs across the full span of a day. A feeding rhythm that has no relationship to the twice-daily schedule most domestic cats receive. That mismatch is real, and it creates genuine pressure. But what applied animal behavior research on domestic cats has documented is that the behavior preceding a feeding is not a straightforward response to an empty stomach. It is a learned, anticipatory sequence. The cat has not simply noticed it is hungry. It has built a behavioral model of you, of your schedule, your responses, your patterns of consistency and inconsistency. And the reinforcement schedule that produces the most durable learned behavior in any animal studied under operant conditioning frameworks is not the one where the reward comes every time. It is the one where the reward comes sometimes. You got up once at 3 in the morning, maybe twice. Not reliably, but enough. That irregularity did not weaken the behavior. It cemented it. Think about what that means for a moment. The cat is not making a random demand. It has identified the specific person whose responses have reinforced this sequence, and it is running that sequence with precision. That is not chaos. That is close, sustained attention to one particular human's behavior over a long period of time. That precision extends into territory the research has only recently begun to map. A study at Linköping University in Sweden, published in 2019, measured long-term cortisol accumulation in 58 dog and owner pairs using hair samples, capturing hormonal buildup across weeks and months, not the spike of a single stressful moment. The cortisol profiles were synchronized. The owner's levels predicted the animals, not the other way around. That study was conducted on dogs, and a direct replication at the same scale has not been published for cats. But feline sensory research establishes the biological basis for a related mechanism. Cats have demonstrated the capacity to detect and respond to changes in human physiological state, with case reports documenting responses to owner medical conditions that preceded any visible physical symptom, though these accounts sit at the level of clinical observation rather than controlled experimental findings. What this means, stated carefully, is that the cat positioned near you during sleep is not simply running its own internal programs in parallel to yours. It may be picking up information from your body. A shift in breathing, a change in restlessness, signals you are producing without awareness. The waking is not always initiated from inside the cat. Sometimes it may begin with something the cat is detecting in you. Not all nighttime movement is directed at the owner, though, and this is the behavior most owners consistently misread. Research on feral cat behavior has documented consistent territorial circuit patterns. Cats moving through the full extent of their home range at regular intervals, driven by predator instinct scheduling, rather than any immediate prey or threat. Indoor cats retain this behavioral program, even without the ecological context that produced it. When a cat's territorial circuit passes across the bed, or lands on the owner, or wakes them in transit, it is not targeting the owner. It is running a route. The owner is a waypoint, not a destination. That is not indifference. It is an ancient patrol logic operating inside a modern apartment, and the owner happens to be in the path of it. There is a category of nighttime waking, however, that belongs to a completely different layer, and missing it carries real consequences. Veterinary behavioral literature documents that increased nighttime vocalization and owner-directed activity are among the earliest behavioral indicators of pain in cats. Appearing before postural changes or reduced daytime movement make anything visible. A cat that has always woken you is easy to normalize. The behavior becomes part of the personality, part of the routine. But a change in the pattern, increased frequency, a new urgency, a different quality to the sound, in a cat whose nighttime behavior was previously stable, is a clinical signal, not a behavioral annoyance. Feline hyperthyroidism, which is prevalent in cats past middle age, commonly produces restlessness and disrupted sleep among its behavioral symptoms, sometimes before other signs become obvious. The cat that begins waking you more often or more insistently after years of relative quiet is not becoming more demanding. It may be telling you something it has no other way to say. In older cats specifically, there is a neurological explanation that remains widely underdiagnosed. Feline cognitive dysfunction syndrome was documented in a study published in the Journal of Small Animal Practice by Gunn Moore and colleagues in 2007. Their findings indicated that the condition affects a substantial proportion of cats in the 11 to 14 age range, and approximately half of cats 15 and older. Nighttime disorientation, persistent vocalization, and waking behavior are its hallmark symptoms. What is happening in these cats is not willfulness and not habit. The internal systems that orient the cat in space and time are degrading. In reduced light, with fewer environmental anchors available, the disorientation intensifies. The owner, as the most consistent sensory presence in the cat's environment, becomes the most stable stimulus available in a perceptual field that is becoming unreliable. The cat is not making a choice in any deliberate sense. It is reaching toward what registers as fixed when everything else has begun to blur. All of these explanations, the reinforcement loops, the physiological detection, the territorial circuits, the medical undercurrents, describe genuine mechanisms. Each one accounts for a real category of the behavior, but none of them address the question planted at the opening. Not what causes the waking, what the persistence of it reveals. In 2019, Kristen Vitale and colleagues at Oregon State University assessed 79 kittens and, separately, 38 adult cats using an adapted version of the attachment assessment that developmental psychologists use with human infants. The strange situation procedure, which measures how an individual uses a familiar person as a secure base under conditions of mild stress. Approximately 65% of cats formed secure attachments to their owners. The defining behavioral marker was proximity seeking, orienting toward the owner, returning to the owner under uncertainty, using the owner as a reference point when the environment felt unfamiliar. Nighttime waking is a form of this. The cat that most persistently seeks the owner, including at 3 in the morning, including in ways that are disruptive and inconvenient, is not the most poorly adjusted cat in the household. It is, in most cases, the most securely attached. The behavior that reads as demanding is, in the language of attachment science, a behavioral index of the relationship itself. Think about that. Every mechanism covered here, the learned reinforcement, the physiological attunement, the territorial circuits, the medical signals, operates on top of a foundation that the Vitale research makes visible. The cat has identified you as its reference point, not the warm corner by the radiator, not the quiet spot under the bed. You. And it demonstrates this most clearly at the hour when its instincts are least filtered and its responses are most direct. Each time it lands on your chest at 3 in the morning, it is performing the same proximity-seeking behavior it would perform under any condition of uncertainty, because you are the point it orients toward when everything else is in question. That is not a training problem. That is not a sleep hygiene problem. That is the relationship expressed in the only language available to it. If you want to understand what your cat is doing when it sits across the room and stares at you in complete silence, that behavior has its own body of research, and what it reveals is stranger than most owners would expect.